Доброго дня.
Good day.
Ми дуже вдячні,
We are
що
so
ви знайшли
grateful that you
час
found
та
time
прийшли
and
сьогодні
came
в КЦ
today
Парковий,
to
де
Parkovy
проходить
Congress
останній
Exhibition
день
Center, where we have the
енергетичного
last
тижня
day of the
форуму
Energy
Україна
Week of the
30.
Forum
І
Ukraine
зараз
30.
ми
And
хочемо
now we'd
розпочати
like to begin the
презентацію оновленої
presentation
корпоративної
of the
стратегії
updated
групи
corporate
«Нафтогаз».
strategy of
Наприкінці
Naftogaz
минулого
Group.
року
In the end of
уряд
the last year, the
затвердив
government
політику
has
власності
approved the
компанії
policy of
та новий
ownership of the
статут,
company and the
відповідно
new
до
statute.
якого
So,
ми
according
оновили
to
нашу
which we've
корпоративну стратегію.
updated our
Сьогодні
corporate
ми
strategy. So
хотіли
today we would like to present a vision of the management team as for the development of business during the next 5 years. We haven't still passed the whole way of the approval of the strategy so far, but using such an opportunity today within this forum, we would still like to make public and to make you aware the presentation of our strategy. So now I'd like to give the floor to the head of the board of Naftogaz, Mr. Andriy Kobolev. Mr. Andriy, please.
Всім доброго дня.
Good day, everyone. Today, I would like to present a document which is the product of a very long discussions, of a very hard and I consider fruitful work of the whole team of Naftogaz Ukraine. This document is presenting in a very short way, in the way how, in our opinion, it could be in the simplest and in the quickest way perceived by the vaster audience. Well, of course, this document is a kind of a quintessence of lots of presentations, analytical materials, calculations, and I will repeat, a very huge piece of work of the team of Naftogaz. It was approved by the supervisory board of the company and will be soon sent for the consideration of the government of Ukraine, that is our shareholder. But let us come to the essence, let us come to the presentation of the strategy itself. I would like to begin with an explanation why the state owns Naftogaz now, just at this moment of the time. All of those aims are documented in the policy of ownership of Naftogaz. This is the name of the document, which names 5 points. 4 of those points, or 4 tasks, are the current ones and are correspondent to the current moment. First of all, this is the achievement of the energy independence and security of energy supply. This aim has 3 sub-targets: the increase of the gas production, the increase of gas storage, and strengthening of the measures of energy efficiency. This is decrease of the consumption of energy resources. The next aim is the transformation of the energy sector, the creation of the efficient market, the provision of transparent and efficient competition, which would improve the quality of the consumption of energy for all of the consumers of Ukraine. The third aim is to provide the efficient and secure transmission of oil and oil products. The fourth aim is the efficient representation of the interests of the Ukrainian state at the international market. The example of this aim is, for instance, our fight for the preservation of the status of the transit country in Ukraine. But not less important is the aim which is for the future. This is the taking of the group of Naftogaz to the through the IPO, to the public markets of capital. The presentation, which you can see now in its essence, is answering the question how, remembering this aim for the future, simultaneously we can perform the tasks which were listed at the previous slides, and how our team is going to achieve the main aim, that is, the initial public offering. So now I'd like to give the floor to our financial director, Mr. Petr Vandril, who will tell about the current aspects and what we're beginning with.
Thank you, André. So, good morning. My name is Peter van Driel, Chief Financial Officer of Naftogaz. And let's start a little bit with taking you through what is our landscape, what's working well, what's not working well in our environment. And if I look back at the previous year, it's fair to say that it was an extremely difficult year, not just for Naftogaz, but for the entire oil and gas industry as a whole. We had the COVID-19 crisis. The economic impact was quite severe and negative. The pricing of oil and gas was completely dislocated. Some of you may remember that in 2020, the oil price was even negative, which is a very unusual event. So the industry had a tough year. And we're now looking forward as an industry to make sure that we preserve cash. So we reduce our investments, for example, and we focus on the efficiencies of operations. And in this environment, Naftogaz operates. We are not immune for what happens around us. We cannot influence the price. We take the price. And we felt that in 2020, because the prices were lower, demand was lower, and also our customers did not always pay us. And this is a cyclical movement. The industry is going through these cycles of many years where prices go up and go down. And we know how to manage the cycle. We've done it before. We know how to do that. But it also emphasizes the point that in oil and gas, you need to look forward. You cannot just focus on 1 year. You need to look forward years, maybe even decades. So in that environment, we operate. That is the relevance of our strategy. That is why we want to become the energy partner of choice within Ukraine and surrounding countries. Now, let me say a few words also about what's happening in the gas market. I'm pleased to say that in Ukraine, the wholesale market starts to work pretty well. More and more volumes are going through the exchange. And the exchange is attracting players from the Ukraine, but also from outside Ukraine. More and more players from Europe enter Ukraine and become active in this market. And I think that's a positive. It makes the market more liquid. And at the same time, we see that the prices at the exchange in Ukraine very much track what happens in Europe. Again, you see the interaction between us and the markets around us. And when we look forward, I think if I look at the global gas market, you now start to see that demand is recovering. I believe in 21, this year, the price and demand will recover to the levels that we saw in 2019. That growth in demand very much comes from the recovery of economies in the Far East, emerging markets. Think about China, think about India. They drive the growth. A little bit closer to home in Europe, you see the markets slowly recovering as well. And in Europe, there you start to see that nuclear and coal are becoming less and less part of the energy mix. At the same time, you see the influence of renewables getting more and more part of that mix. But whatever you do, whatever analysis you look like, it doesn't matter whether you look forward 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 years, gas is a substantial part of that energy mix. Gas is here to stay for many more decades to come. And that positions Naftogaz very well in this environment. If we look at the coming years, we talk about our strategy, what are our plans, what do we want to do? And you'll hear more about that. But there are a couple of levers that we must pull in order to be successful, no matter what we do in terms of strategy. We must increase our efficiency. That is a program we started last year to make sure that the company is more efficient and effective. And often this comes down to less bureaucracy, more focus, and maybe sometimes fewer people. The next point, which I believe is very important, is that we look at commercial excellence. Naftogaz has a trading outfit that is again well positioned. We've got the gas, we've got the markets, we've got the storage. You make money out of that. And at the same time, we must make sure that as part of our value protection, our customers actually pay us. Then let's look also a little bit about digitalization. That is very fundamental for what we're doing. And it's not just about automating. It is also about eliminating processes which are not useful. You standardize processes and you simplify them. And once you do all of that, then you automate. And we still have a lot of processes to automate, but we're making progress. We are, I'm happy to say, fully into the SAP world, and that really drives efficiency. So for me, that is, in that sense, important. The last point is, what do we do with our investments? I told you before that we need to preserve cash. In 2020, we reduced our investments by 50%. And this is not just turning off investments, but the real trick here is, do we understand what we really need? What is the real demand? And then you start looking at, once you know what you need, are we going to invent it ourselves? Or are we just buying something that's available in the market, that's widely used in the industry? And only then you start to look at what are the unit prices. So we're really focusing on our procurement processes. And that's an area where we easily can reduce our costs by 10 to 15%. So those are, I think, a couple of essential levers that we have to pull in any case to make the company more effective and more profitable and enhance our profitability. And with that, I want to hand over to André again, who will take us through the next level of detail of the strategy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I would like to come to the next slide then, which would explain how altogether we can see the corporate strategy of Naftogaz. This slide is answering the question, which main components are included in our future business. And the first, the biggest, and the most substantial component, of course, used to be and is still and in the future will be the gas business. Peter has shown a very important slide where we saw that in spite of the global tendencies, in spite of the decrease of the consumption of fuels which can provide to lead to CO2 emissions, in spite of the changes at the energy market, gas is still one of the main sources of energy production on our planet. That is why gas business in the corporate portfolio of Naftogaz used to be and is still the most important and the most substantial. What's the aim in front of us? We would like, well, of course, to increase production and extraction. We'd like to increase it in the economically reasonable way, using all the opportunities which we have got last year. I will speak about them a bit later. We would like to increase competences in trading. We would like to take back the status of the biggest trader at the wholesale market, which will perform the whole role of the bank or insurance of the whole market, smoothing all the price peaks as we could see, which can happen from time to time. For instance, in January this year, we could see this peak at the market of retail gas. And of course, we'd like to increase our efficiency and to become more competent, both in the search of the new field and in the efficiency of their extraction and generation. The next one, important segment, is the supply of gas. Supply of gas, as for now, is the new business for NAK Naftogaz. We've achieved certain success, which will be told by the head of this division, Maxim Rabinovich, later. But what we'd like to see in the future? In the future, we'd like to see to come to the markets of other energy sources like heat, like electrical energy, and we'd like to construct efficient and convenient business. In Naftogaz, we have such a code new word which we are using for retail market, that is gas Uber. We would like all the consumers in Ukraine to have an opportunity to get the same quality, high quality, simple, transparent, and what's the most important, fair, just service which the consumers of this service get. We'd like to get the client database, which is at least 30% of the market of all of the consumers in Ukraine. How can we achieve this ambition? We'll tell about that a bit later. The last, but not the least, is the low-carbon direction, which will be told by Lana Zerkal in more details. Any oil and gas company in the world understands that when you go to the IPO and the work with the end user, it is impossible if you don't achieve the global task to decrease the CO2 emissions, to decrease the negative impact onto the environment, and to stick to or to achieve the status of the neutral balance, carbon neutral balance. What's also important to explain at this slide, of course, that all of those three directions, and we name them three platforms, are interconnected and create a synergy effect. If we speak about the gas business and the gas supply, then of course the synergy is the management of risks and prices. The risks of the price increase or decrease, the risk of the sufficiency of energy resources, the replacement of one sources of the energy with another one. Between the gas business and low-carbon business, an important synergy is technical competence. Our experts who are totally training permanently, who are getting new knowledge in the classic segment of gas business, they can use this knowledge in the segment of the new technologies. And of course, between the segment of supply and low-carbon segment, a very important synergy is that our consumer, in the end of the day, always knows that we will find the source of the energy which is in the best way can satisfy his or her needs at a certain moment in the time with the best price, with the best quality, reliably and stably. And you will see again this slide for several times, and we will come back to it as well. But it's so important to have this element in our strategy, this balance between all of the three platforms. This balance will make Naftogaz balanced and stable company, which will be able to stand against all of the challenges of the market and the global shift and transition, the transition to the green energy, which was recently mentioned by the European Union, and any other challenges, making us an attractive investment for the investors, making us the reliable partner for the state, making us the high-quality supplier for the end user. So now I'd like to give the floor to the head of gas business, the main executive director, Mr. Otto Vattelander.
Thank you. Thank you very much, André, for explaining to us the overall context of the strategy and introducing the importance of the gas business. For Naftogaz, the gas business has always been important. Every day we are asked when we're going to grow our production volumes. Every week people want to assess how well our team is producing and want to look at the growth of production volumes. And every day, for the last decade, we have had actually a sad story. And the sad story was that we are struggling to grow because we do not have enough reserves. Over the last several months, the most important transformation of the Naftogaz group has started to take place. The transformation of our reserve base. Together with the government, we have worked on allocating new licenses to Naftogaz, which allows us to grow our production in the future. How significant this transformation is, I would like to show to you in this slide. In this slide, the first thing you see is an upside-down pyramid. And where the ancient Greek get a lot of credit for building pyramids in a way that nobody understands, together with the government, we now have changed the shape of the pyramid of the gas business in Ukraine, which at least is a significant and similar change for us as a company. We moved from being a gas-poor company to being a gas-rich company. Now we need to identify all the fields and extract them. What do you see in this chart? On the left hand, you see what our position in gas reserves is today. You see that the majority of gas reserves we have is in production, the 254. That is what we are producing from, and every day, 18,000 people are working hard to avoid the decline in that business. It is our mature, we call it brownfield, ongoing business. The struggle with growth comes from the fact that we have very little new reserves, or we had very little new reserves to invest in and to develop. Over the last several months, we received licenses for Łużyska, for the entire offshore. We concluded the negotiations around the production sharing agreements, a very significant step that is recognized internationally as well. We also believe that there are some more opportunities in the Carpathians. Together, that changes our reserve base. We think that now we are looking at more than 500 billion cubic meters, ultimately recoverable reserves. This changes is a significant number, but what it really means is that it changes tenfold how much we might be able to produce and the reserve base from which we start, on which we start investing. Because what we need to remember is our country, Ukraine, is incredibly rich in gas. We know, not only Naftogaz, international experts, that there is significant gas in the ground. But then gas needs to be trapped in fields so that we can access the gas. If you then actually look into the process of development of reserves into production, there is a context that we have where we look at resources, so what is in the ground. Then we need to find it, and this what we are talking about here is what we think ultimately with those licenses we could recover, but we haven't proven it. We didn't do the investments yet to demonstrate that. That will be the next level. Then we've proven that the gas is there, and we have identified the specific fields. And then we get what experts in the industry call the 2P reserves, which means now we have proven those reserves and we can extract them economically. So there was time to turn this around into production, and there are significant capital investments involved. Now, we have put our strategy in action already over the last several months, but what it means for our capital allocation is even more significant. Over the course of the next 5 years, our business plan anticipates that in production, in the upstream, we will invest over $7 billion. And we also expect that in the second period of 5 years, we will double that amount. If we look today at how much money we can afford to invest, that is roughly speaking half. So we will go out, and our strategy does include to attract partners to co-invest with us over time. What you see in this picture, in terms of the balance of investments, is even more important. You see that this year, we still invest a significant part of our money in those old declining fields, but already we start shifting. And this year, we will launch seismic, and our ambition is to do this year and complete next year seismic in the order of magnitude of $150 million, both the onshore and the offshore. All the activities are already in progress to launch those seismics this year. In Łużyska, we even have the plan to already drill this year, to start the drilling. And before we start the drilling, we are planning to go to the old and the existing wells into the area to aim to rejuvenate those wells, to already start producing from those reservoirs as well. So everything is in place to make this turnaround from investing significantly in our old fields to moving this into our new fields. And assuming the success that all the experts in the world expect for us to be here, you will see that our investment portfolio needs to shift further to our new fields. This is the most significant transformation we can offer to you, to Ukraine, in the coming years. André, at the end of the discussion, will talk what it means for the country in terms of impact, not only for us, but for the country. Now, what does it do to us? Why am I here? I'm here because, not only because I like Ukraine, but professionally, the oil and gas sector in Ukraine offers a tremendous opportunity. If we compare Ukraine with the rest of Europe, everywhere in Europe, the gas production is declining, as we have seen in Ukraine over the last years. Only Ukraine has the potential to grow volume in the coming years. This year, we are on track to take the number 3 position in the European Production League, after Norway and after UK. Ukraine will become the 3rd. But all of the existing countries are continuing to decline, and the import dependency for Europe continues to grow. This is well known, but our country in Ukraine is the only one that has the resource base that if we allocate the investments, we can grow. So we are the growth area in the European Union. And our Black Sea prospects are very well recognized externally by international investors and by oil and gas companies that are considering to partner with us. And we now are in active discussion with several parties to join us over time in this, I would say, exciting journey. The gas production business needs to be supported by a very well-defined sales outlet to make sure that we get the revenues for our gas. And Peter talked about the challenges, how significant those are in terms of maximizing the prices for our gas. Maximizing may be at odds to what is good for consumers in Ukraine. So what we are building is a world-class trading organization. In the coming year, probably 2 years, we will attract talent out of the international market to complement our people in Ukraine. And we will build a trading outfit of about 40 to 50 people over time. We will focus a lot on developing our own competences. Because what is trading? Trading thrives in a world where we see a lot of price volatility. So the price changes every day, all the time. We know this very well from oil markets, but also from other commodity markets. And it means that for customers, this often adds a lot of risk in their activities. If you're an industrial customer, you don't want to have fluctuating prices. And as we've been intensely discussing with the government over the last months and have stepped up our responsibility to stabilize retail prices, we also know that for households, fluctuating prices is not desirable. Naftogaz was the first to introduce a fixed price product, offering customers 12 months fixed price. But that incurs risks for Naftogaz. The way to manage those risks is actually to go to international exchange markets, where we can buy forward products or we can sell forward products. I will not bother you with all the details, but being a trader who can act on multiple markets is for us a risk manager, or if you wish, an insurance party, to make sure that we can stabilize prices. This not only is important for the customers, it is also important for our upstream. Because when we invest in upstream, from time to time, it is important for us to guarantee returns to the investments we are making. And that will allow us to have a more stable dividend profile for the investors, including our main shareholder as well. So trading is placed in between the markets, our customers on one hand, and the production on the other hand, and it will make this insurance game and find opportunities to add value to the production and to the price of gas. Now, one important asset that we have as a company is our storage business as well. Last year, we created the independent storage service operation. And we had an amazingly successful year. Not only did we manage to ramp up our storage volumes to a record high, almost maximum capacity, but to be recognized by the international community, we had almost 100 parties, international parties, storing gas and having contracts to store gas in Ukraine. This is double what it was the year before. Parties recognize the independence, parties recognize the criticality of storage into a portfolio, both in Ukraine as well as in Europe, where a lot of this gas is actually used. This allows us also to benefit from changes in the market, that in the summer when prices are low, gas tends to flow into the storage in Ukraine, and in the winter, when the gas prices are high, gas tends to flow out back to Europe. The resulting price differences between Ukraine and Europe are a result from those market forces. And we are happy to continue to contribute to those market forces. And by the way, we also committed to a 15% gas release program, which means we are selling on the Ukrainian exchange 15% of our volumes every year, so that there's access guarantee to all other parties. Access to gas and guarantee of supply is important, and that's where exactly our storage business comes in. We have seen this at the turn of the year last year, when negotiating with Russia over the transit contract through the country. We've also seen how important it is when we liberalize a market, the household market, that it's important to secure supplies over time. There may always be situations that a supplier cannot fulfill its obligations, and then Naftogaz, as the supplier of last resort, will be able to step in, and our access to storage helps us to create that position exactly. And the last thing is, it will also be synergetic with maximizing the value. When do we want to sell the gas into the market? Because, of course, we prefer not to sell excess gas in the summer when prices are low. We prefer to transfer the price to the winter and get higher winter prices where we can. We leave that nicely up to the traders. So in summary, our gas business is a significant part of the portfolio. It is a large part today, with an investment program of more than $20 billion over the coming decade. We are on path to fundamentally transform the company, fundamentally transform our upstream business, combined with an ongoing strong position in storage in the country, and combined with a strong development of our trading activities. We think we have a very synergetic, powerful, and differentiated portfolio to step into the next decade and make up for what may be a lost decade in terms of production growth. So thank you very much. One last thing. You may have seen this already, our strategy in implementation. So last week we signed an MOU with OMV. They're excited about the developments here. We're now negotiating and discussing what can be a role for them in the country. And we expect to bring them on board in the coming either months, maybe this takes a year, and we're discussing with other parties as well. With that, I would like to give over to Max.
Good day. Again, thank you so much, Otto. So retail business. Retail business maybe is the youngest business of Naftogaz Group, but it's a business which is the quintessence of the expertise of the group. Why? Because gas business of Naftogaz Group gives us all of the preconditions to become successful. So what that business is about as a retail one, it is exceptionally about the consumers, the customers. What we need to know, which needs they have, and how we can satisfy them. Who are we and whom we will be? Our task is to become a national supplier of energy services. It is a very global idea. It needs time. We want to represent not only gas business as a resource, but all of the resources which are needed by our customers. Since August 2020, we've started at the first stage as a gas supplier. But ahead of us, we have 5 years during which we need to become very needed by our customers. This platform has 3 stages. A first stage began, as I've mentioned, in 2020, when we started as a gas supplier. We have rather precise and specific aims what needs to be done during those 2 years. The first stage is so important because it's a development of our platform. We need to scale up. We need to have profitable propositions and prices. We need every day we should speak about the quality of the service for our customers, and only the trust of our customers to us as a supplier gives us preconditions for the creation of this business. The second and the third stages are so important from the perspective of the development. At the second stage, we are planning to become a supplier of energy services. We are hoping that during the next time, the electrical energy as a resource will be open from the PSO mode, and also the heat energy and other resources. We hope, and even this year we are conducting pilot projects on energy efficiency, because only the decrease of consumption, besides the price, gives the opportunity to give our consumers trust to us as a supplier. And the third stage is so important because this is already the transition from the products to the energy solutions. This is when we take all of the needs of a customer, and not only some of them, and transform them into opportunities. What do we need to do as a retail business to give, first of all, profitable and paid prices, or I would say utility bills? The first is digitalization. What digitalization is? This is, in fact, the simplification of the processes and their automation. It's not only about the customers who have an opportunity to change the supplier online or to have the service provided. It's about all the customers who are living in the rural areas, in the cities, who have an opportunity to come to us as a supplier in any way, online or offline, but to understand that the internal processes and the speed of the transition or the service are similar. I will name a little example. Subsidies. 30% of our customers are subsidiaries in Ukraine. So it's so important for them to understand that this transition from supplier to supplier doesn't have negative impact. How this process used to be organized? When you change a supplier, you needed to go to the special center and to apply with a new package of documents. Then you could be worried whether they take it or not, whether they get it or not. How is it working now? We simplified the process with the Ministry of Social Policy, and now we have this way. You are applying a form to the new supply company, and it does everything. It's automatically sharing those registers with the center, and you, as a client, as a customer, even don't feel that you need to do something. It is, in our understanding, is automation and digitalization. Secondly, optimization of expenses. As it was mentioned by Otto, it is so important that we've got the competence in trading. Trading gives us an opportunity to get the best price, stable prices, and to guarantee our customers that we will always have a resource. Another component, operational model. When we say that we need to go for the customer, not the customer should go to us. The customer needs to have an opportunity to change a supplier or to have a service provided in the place where it's convenient for him or her. That is why we have both online channels, where the supply change takes 10 minutes or maybe even 5 minutes, and offline channels. And there are more than 2,000 departments of our partners, and this year we will open 2,000, at least 2,000 more, for every customer, wherever he or she is living at, to have an opportunity coming to his or her bank or post office company to change the supplier easily for the more profitable one. And this is a very important factor because it gives us an opportunity to optimize the expenses and to provide the best price for our clients. And the third, a very important one, when I mentioned that we need to be to provide profitable utility bills, that is prices, it means that we have both price and consumption. The projects on energy efficiency should give us an opportunity to decrease the customers' consumptions, which gives us the trust as a supplier in the choice of energy resources. 2020. Since August, we began to work at the gas market and we already have some results. We already have become the national supplier because in 6 months we got plus 600,000 new customers. Our commercial portfolio now is 850,000 customers, but 500,000 customers have us as a supplier of the last instance. So now we say last resort. We say that we can work with each of them, we can give them the bills, we can serve them, and give them the opportunity to buy additional auxiliary services. This is the quintessence of our business. So it's so important for the national supplier to be in each the region where we already entered, and in each region we have the customers, and we do hope those customers will be satisfied. Our ambitions. Now we are saying that 9% of the market is already in the supply of the Naftogaz group. The market has only 12.5 million customers. Our ambition is to have at least 30%. We have a very specific plan for the 5 years. As I said, it's 850,000 now. To achieve the aim of, in fact, 3 million customers, we need to work daily and to ask the customer whether he or she is satisfied with the work with our company. And daily, we should make his or her experience of interaction with us better. Thank you. Now I'd like to invite and to give the floor to my colleague Lana, who will tell about the low-carbon businesses of Naftogaz Group. Thank you. Well, if retail business is the new business for the company, then low-carbon businesses are the new direction for me and the company as well. But in the world, which is now in front of faces the challenges connected with the consumption of the energy increasing, and we need to decrease the CO2 emissions, we as the company, which has the name of Naftogaz, and is working in the sphere which is connected with this name, oil and gas. And as for any other company in this sphere, the challenge for us is the following, that we need to answer the question, how we can become successful in the world which is moving in the direction of the low-carbon energy. In the world which has chosen for itself the aims, the goals in the Paris Agreement, the world which has defined the green course for the European Union, and in the country which has defined that the goal for 2035 is the increase, the substantial increase of the part of, or the share of green energy. For the company, it's also a challenge, and we as a company are going to be in line in the progress in the implementation of the goals of Paris Agreement. What does it mean? It means, first of all, the decrease of the CO2 emissions connected with our own activity. And there are lots of ways how we can achieve it. First of all, that's really the decrease of the CO2 emissions, and secondly, this is the shift in the approaches in the service provision for our customers, and it will have impact on our whole business portfolio, and it will be connected with the implementation of the new types of activities, the new green and environmentally friendly types of our business. First of all, this is the wind generation. Ukraine has a huge potential in the development of wind energy in the offshore, and we, as the company, which is now in its activity, is achieving in the gas production to the shelf, is also considering those perspectives for itself. So according to the analysis of the World Bank, Ukraine has the highest potential in the development of this sphere. The World Bank assesses the Black Sea zone as an opportunity to increase 460 gigawatt of electrical energy connected with the development of wind energy, and Ukraine from this portfolio has 250 gigawatt of opportunities. Really, those opportunities are connected with the use of the tools which are now not accessible for us because we are not the part of the European Union and we cannot so far use the advantages which are provided to the European companies. That is why the development of this direction is also connected with the necessity of the development of our cooperation with the European Union and to guarantee that we will become an equal partner in the development of green energy, because we are taking the aims and goals connected with the crazy investments. And we all know that the investment cycle in the green energy is going on for more than 25 years, which is connected with the necessity to define the partners and also to develop the production cycles and lines. We understand that besides the wind generation, we are also an attractive partner in the hydrogen production. We have already awarded a memorandum with Energoatom in the development of hydrogen energy. This is the business of the future, and the assessment of its development now are deviating from 2% which are now in the hydrogen consumption to 23% in 2050. So as you can see, the cycle is rather long. And we are now only in the beginning of the development. This beginning should be defined with our strategy, which is rather flexible, which is adaptable from the perspective of the speed of changes which are taking place in the development of technologies and innovations, and it allows us to plan for the future, considering that we can see ourselves as a part of the European green course and deal. So, and now I'd like to give the floor to Peter Beck.
Thank you, Lana. So I think the picture becomes clear. You know what we will bring in terms of deliverables for the coming years. And in this journey, we must, of course, ask ourselves, can we afford this? Is this financially possible? Our challenge will be that we balance the growth that you've heard today with competitive returns to the shareholder, the state of Ukraine. In 2020, 13% of the state budget came from Naftogaz. That is an amount of 142 billion hryvnias. And we truly want to keep that position. We want to make sure that we continue to provide the shareholder with an attractive return, whilst at the same time we invest in the future. And you've seen the numbers. These are capital-heavy programs. But the size of the prize is enormous. If we then look at where will we spend the money, the vast majority of our expenditure will go to the gas business. If you look at the ambitious plans, we also know that we can't do it all ourselves. We will need to seek partners who invest with us in new opportunities. The first step is that we start to de-risk our opportunities. As Otto explained, that we understand what's there, that we can make a value proposition to our partners. If we look at our retail business, and you've seen the growth ambitions, driven by customer focus, that is not a heavy capital requirement. And then look at our low carbon business. I'm very happy to say that almost daily people approach us, can we participate with you in this great opportunity? I'm not concerned about finding partners or financing. That will not be the problem. The problem will be, how do we make the right choice? What are the real investment opportunities? Where can we generate value? But I'm pleased to say that in that domain, the international investment community is really ready to enter Ukraine. Now, if we talk about the investment community, it is important that we have a clear view on our environmental and social and governance aspects, ESG. On the environmental side, we embrace the goals, the sustainability goals that have been set by the United Nations. This is something that any international investor will recognize. And this becomes quite important for those people who wish to invest in Naftogaz. Today, an investor cannot just come up with a bunch of money and says, good luck. We need to be demonstrating, we need to prove them that we are a responsible company. We need to earn our license to operate. And the days that we said, trust us, we'll do a good job, those days are gone. It's about show that you're responsible. And as part of that license to operate, we invest in our communities. We have social programs. I'm personally very proud of the role that Naftogaz has played and still plays in helping to fight COVID-19. We played a major role in all of that. We played our part, we helped society, we actually focused on communities. So our role in society is not just to generate cash. We are here to be a responsible corporate citizen. Last point on governance. Governance is extremely important in this world. It is all about clarity, about the ownership policy, about our charter, a well-functioning supervisory board in line with international best practice. It's also about how do we report to the outside world. By law, we report according to the international financial reporting standards. It means that every investor understands what our numbers mean. And in those years to come, we will continue to provide that transparency. Make no mistake, anybody who believes we should not report according to the IFRS standards tells us to break the law. And that will simply not happen. So that whole reporting and transparency is extremely important for our journey that we embark on. And when we balance all our growth with our returns, it is important that our investors, be it in projects or be it at the corporate level, can rely on a stable investment environment in Ukraine. We will have partners who will team up with us in the offshore, in hydrogen. They must be able to rely on an investment climate in country that is predictable. They must be able to trust the legal system. We have our bondholders. You know, we go to the market and we use our balance sheet, which is quite strong, to finance the growth. But if a bondholder comes to us, they must have the trust that in this environment it is safe to invest. And again, make no mistake, because these bondholders, these investors, can go anywhere. There are many other opportunities in the emerging market sphere where they can go to. And they will vote with their feet, and they will go where the opportunities are out there, and it's not only Ukraine. The same will be true when we move towards the end game and we get ready for IPO. The investment community must have the confidence in Ukraine that this is a great place to invest. So that whole environment in which we operate, I'm really pleased, and it was mentioned before, this government has done a lot for the company. But the real challenge will be going forward to provide that stable environment. And if that is in place, I'm very confident that we can finance and attract investment opportunities in country in order to enable our growth for the future. And with that, I would like to hand back to André again.
Дякую, Пітер.
Thank you, Peter.
Ми багато говорили.
We were speaking a lot about our plans and what we'd like to achieve.
Я б хотів
So I'd like to finalize this presentation with our vision of what are the preconditions of the success of Naftogaz, what we need to do both within the company and externally for our strategy to be implemented.
перед тим, як говорити про це,
Before we speak about that,
повернутися
I'd like to come back a bit to the past.
В Нафтогазу є багато
Naftogaz has lots of victories, and we've mentioned a lot about them. This is diversification of gas market. This is, in fact, the getting rid of the dependency of Ukraine as an independent state from the Russian gas supply, when we got rid of the risk of political and geopolitical blackmailing. This is the successful unbundling. This is, in fact, the creation of the full-scale competitive retail gas market. Yes, this process is not that simple to implement. It is having certain obstacles on its way. There are problems, but still, in fact, during the last 6.5 years, Naftogaz managed, as I am sure deeply, to cardinally transform the whole gas segment of the Ukrainian energy market. But there are some points which we failed to achieve totally, and very often those who criticize us, they mention the program 2020. So the view to the past, what happened and why it happened, is also rather important.
програму 2020.
The program of 2020, speaking about it and explaining the situation of the past for our shareholders, for our main partners, I always show the next allegory. Just imagine that you have some agrarian business and you decided to invest into it. And your management was given money. This money were invested, first of all, into the equipment. You bought some harvesters and equipment, but the new fields where this equipment could work were not given to you. The similar situation happened with Naftogaz Group. We managed to cardinally change the park of our equipment, to invest money, substantial money into that, but unfortunately, those preconditions, which were also in the program 2020 about the new licenses allocation, about the simplification of the tax code, about the signing of the new contracts on the distribution of the products, they were not accomplished. Unfortunately, out of 19 conditions which were in this program, totally, entirely was only one of them. All of the rest were accomplished either later or still not done. The main conditions were done in the end of 2020, and we're very grateful to the government and the president for the opportunity to sign 4 contracts, and this process took all of the participants of the market 2 years since the beginning of this process. We are grateful that we were able to buy Naftogaz company, which allows us to begin the work on the new gas platforms, so-called, where really the group of Naftogaz is finalizing the drilling of a well, which will allow us to find out what's the speed and in what way we'll be able to speed up these platform and these field. We are also grateful for the opportunity to work at the Black Sea ashore, and I'm sure that smaller players, smaller private companies will never be able to become successful in such a big project. We, as Naftogaz, don't also consider that this part of work can be done by ourselves only. That is why, how Otto Vaterlander said, we've signed the first memorandum with an international company, OMV, which since 2002 is actively working on the starting of all of the opportunities of the Black Sea and Azov Sea shore, which have some practical developments which are interested. And by the way, this partnership, as for me, has one more important symbol. I've read some criticizers that you, Naftogaz, do you know that MV company is the investor into Nord Stream 2? Of course we know it. We know all the investors. We are working with them. But these partnerships, as we are sure, allow us, Ukrainians, to say to the Western world, we are the better partners. Work with us. You can earn together with us in the transparent and civilized and mutually profitable way. That is why these partnerships relations don't only allow to provide the growth of the resource base and to expect of the increase of the gas production, but also to accomplish one of the tasks which I mentioned in the very beginning. This is the improvement of the image of Ukraine and the international arena, the improvement of our investment attractiveness, the integration of us into a civilized Western world, achievement of access to the bigger markets of capital. It's so important because our strategy cannot be implemented without the achievement of this aim at the global world frontline. What do we need to do within the Naftogaz group? And it is so important to say here that when we speak about the external problems, we're not forgetting about the internal problems. We should be fair with ourselves and honest with our shareholders, with the state, with the consumers. We should precisely understand who we are, what we are, as ourselves. And super important is the change and the shift in the corporate culture. We began this hard process, which we named transformation, more than 2 years ago. It is ongoing and very hard. Some of the reflections of this process can be seen publicly. The criticisms of our employees, both current and previous ones, ex-employees, the criticism of our partners, the changes of the staff, the decrease of the number of the employees in some of the spheres which are not efficient and cannot become efficient without those hard processes. This is the change of the organizational structure. And the last answer on the question who we are is in the very precise understanding of our mission and our values. Without that, we just cannot name ourselves a group. We won't be able to implement a plan which was mentioned by the previous speakers. Besides that, it's also so important for us to change the way, or methods, or the ways, answering the question how we are working. And it claims from us the actions which may sound simple, but very really hard to implement. This is, first of all, the increase of the process efficiency. This efficiency partially is possible through the implementation of information technologies, the implementation of partnerships. Last year, we've signed several interesting documents. The first bigger partnership is working with the foreign Romanian company of export petroleum. And this year already it brings substantial positive results and outcomes. The outcomes which overrate our expectations and they exceed cardinal. Moreover, we should decrease bureaucracy. Naftogaz has a history which looks like the history of a ministry. We are now changing our attitude towards the business and actions. And what Maxim Rabinovich mentioned, simplification of the processes, getting new clients, the simplification of the process of the transition of our customers to the subsidies, the simplification of the process how we get the meters indicators. Those are the examples how we changed the way and the quality of our work. And the successful changes in this direction, which are for instance, proved by a very rapid growth of our share at the retail market from 2% during a very short period of time, witness that it's not only a theory, but it's also practice. The practice which is working, which exists, and which allows us to believe in ourselves and demonstrate our shareholders that we are not only mentioning something, but we are also performing. Moreover, it's so important not to forget about the external environment. What we ask, sometimes we claim, sometimes we promote it from our external partners. First of all, is the continuation of market transformations. We need to finalize the implementation of an efficient reform, first of all in the segment of gas market. We are expecting for the reform in the segment of electrical energy market. We need it because we need to sell not only gas, but electrical energy to the customers. We do hope that we'll finalize the reform in the segment of heat generation, in the creation of the full cycle of high-quality market in all of the energy production spheres is a necessary and compulsory precondition for the successful development of not only Naftogaz, but of the whole country of ours. On the way to this reform, we also have the issue of debts. 80 billion of debts. This is the issue which we need to solve. Last year, we solved a part of this problem, compensating through the mechanism of the special obligations, and we got substantial sum of money from the state budget, more than 30 billion hryvnia, but we gave back to the budget 10 billion more than we got from it. So we need a balanced policy about dividends. Not a single company in Naftogaz can invest and officially develop without understanding how much money the shareholder will have. So the policy which existed last year, 95%, is not the long-term and clever one. Not a single oil and gas company can efficiently invest and develop, giving away almost all the net profit to the shareholders. We need something for the development. Going on with the reform of corporate governance. Corporate governance, in the case of Naftogaz, managed its super high efficiency. There wouldn't be a single victory which were listed above if not the change of the corporate management of our group. And of course, the very regulatory policy which is in consent with the previous events. This is the list of the preconditions with the help of which we can be successful. And I need to mention, we don't speak about anything new. We don't speak about anything which wasn't mentioned by our shareholders, the government, the parliament. The things which used to be planned, they need to be implemented. And the implementation of those points will allow us to provide new victories, first of all, for the shareholders, for the state, for the consumers. What can we get from the perspective of the economic effect if our strategy is not implemented? Well, of course, it's the loss of numerous job places, almost 200,000. This is the lack of revenues in the budget, more than 100 billion hryvnia, and the revenues not get by the pension fund, almost 30 billion hryvnia, and the decrease of GDP for 400 billion. The figures which I show are the figures for the next 10 years, from 2021 to 2030. But let us speak about the positive side. What can Ukraine get, what all of us can get, in case of a successful implementation of our strategy? This is almost 300,000 job places. This is more than 300 billion hryvnia of the revenues of the state budget of Ukraine. This is more than 36 billion hryvnia in the revenues of the pension fund and 438 billion hryvnia added to the GDP. Why do I speak about those figures? Because it's so important to understand the so-called bonus or the size of the victory in the end of our way. It's important to understand why the MPs need to vote and to adopt the laws which would allow us to finalize the reform. Why such a complicated, hard and I would say, unpleasant process of the implementation of corporate management and the improvement of the independence of decision-making in the state companies needs to be finalized and implemented for our shareholders, just for those figures. So this is my favorite slide of the whole strategy. It shows and demonstrates where we begin and what we'd like to achieve. We've shown our way from the perspective of two dimensions. The first dimension is how we generate our main economic conclusions. And we'd like to move along from the state when we rely upon the assets to the state where we can focus on the knowledge. The assets were a legacy from our predecessors, from the Soviet Union. The knowledge is what is impossible to gain. We can gain it only ourselves. And this is one of the cultural, complicated transitions which the company group of Naftogaz Ukraine is going through. The second dimension is what we focus upon. As for now, our main focus is on the goods and services which we produce. We consider that any company in the nearest future cannot be successful without the focus on the customers, on our consumers. In this dimension, we also have our partners. That is why we are beginning with the short and small capitalization of the company in the current year, where the green energy, this is the blue part of the circle, is taking a smaller part. In 2025, we are planning to achieve the public IPO and finalize this process. In 2025, we consider that we'll be able to achieve the growth of gas production, which will be based first of all upon the growth of the reserves which were mentioned by Otto Vaterlander. And also we consider that we can become a very efficient energy supply platform which will supply gas, electrical energy, heat, and the services of energy efficiency which were mentioned by Maxim Rabinovich. As of now, we will be able to launch and to get a substantial part of revenues from the low-carbon platform. This is how we understand the whole issue and the complicated story of energy in Ukraine, but we consider that without the green energy, the future of the energy generation is just impossible. And of course, we consider that up till now, our partnerships will allow us to get access both to the knowledge and the capital, which was mentioned by Peter Van Driel. 2030. Approximately 1/4 of the whole energy generated by NAK Naftogaz Ukraine should come from the green sources. We will be a public company. We will be focused on our customers, the consumers, as the main source of our value creation. We will also be actively changing the portfolio of our energy sources and will introduce the transition to the sustainable energy. I think that in 2030 we'll be able to compare ourselves with the leading companies, the lead oil and gas companies of the world. The quintessence of our strategy, or the logo we'd like to mention with our shareholders, is the partner which is chosen. We'd like to become the partners which is chosen first of all by the consumers, the partner or an employer who is chosen by the experts, selected one, the reliable partner for our companies who are cooperating with us, the main source of revenues for the state, for our shareholder, and for the people of Ukraine. I thank all of you for such an opportunity to present the strategy of NAK Naftogaz Ukraine. I thank you for your time, and now I just finalize my speech and give the floor to Yulia back. I do hope our presentation was rather precise and comprehensible, but now we've foreseen some time to answer your questions. So I would ask all of the speakers to come up to the stage. And the journalists, please be ready to the right and to the left. There are our friendly hostesses with the microphones who can help you to be heard. So, if you've got any questions, please introduce yourselves, the media you present, and the speaker whom you would ask this or that question. So please, dear colleagues, if there are other questions, please, the floor is yours. Hello, my name is Mr. Fordak, TSN. The question is to Mr. Andriy. I do apologize for such a part. You know about the letter which is now publicly aware. This is of the Ministry of Energy, Yuri Vetrenko, to the Prime Minister, Denis Shmyhal, with the proposition to fire you and the whole supervisory board because of the illegal decrease of the plans of gas production and because of the violations which led to the losses of 75 billion hryvnia, if we believe that letter of Mr. Vetrenko. Would you comment upon such serious claims? Thank you. Well, maybe this is not the question about the strategy of Naftogaz, but the question of the past, but still I will comment on that short way. First of all, for lots of times, and this time as well, we've explained what happened with the program of 2020. We are ready for the expert discussion in that, and the detailed analysis, what was done, what wasn't done, and why. This is the first point. Secondly, as for the state audit, it seems to me that was directly and accessibly explained by our financial director, CFO. The main problems of the state audit service is that we are using the international standards of accounting reporting. And that is why here it is obvious to see this contradiction. What the government tells us, it asks us to get prepared to become a public company, and any public world company needs to stick to those requirements. You cannot get to the stock market and not to stick to the international standards. It's just impossible. You won't be let there and to go there. But on the one hand, we are said become an international company, but on the other hand, in the report, the problem of the Naftogaz is that we are using those international standards. It is a contradiction. We, as a team, have made our choice. We consider that to go in the direction of the approved aim and to become an international company is our way. So I think that in this aspect, the conclusion of the state audit is criticized hardly and fairly. So we decided to ignore it, this unpleasant document and the letter as well, which you mentioned, and to move on. Thank you. I will read out loud the question from the comments to our broadcast to Mr. Andriy as well. Why Naftogaz needs retail market if the wholesale prices of Naftogaz are much higher than retail prices? Thank you for the question. Really, after the intervening of the state and the president, which happened in January this year, into the retail gas market, there were maximum restrictions for the gas price for the usual consumers. Why it happened is a different story. I think we shouldn't speak about that now, though any developing market is not perfect since the very beginning. And we have discussed the issues of the retail market with the government and other authorities and powers, including the independent regulator anti-monopoly committee. We warned that the excessive concentration of one private group at this market can lead to certain distortions in the prices or the abuse of their dominating state. But we do hope that this abuse will have a response from the state. We hope that soon at the market there will be the certain degrouping of the private players, or so-called unbundling, which will allow the competition to be efficient. Under these conditions, we consider that the retail market will become efficient again when the price will be correspondent or will be a bit higher than the price of the wholesale market, as it's working in all of the other world markets. So we are focusing on the retail market because it's our strategic choice. We consider that in 2-3 years years, the prices at this market will be fluctuating as it's working at any other market of the world, and give us an opportunity to get a normal level of revenue, and the consumers will give the high quality and fair price, including the use of the tools of the insurance from its increase, which we mentioned, the same fixed annual price. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Igor Moskalevich, please. The mic should come to you now.
Igor Moskalevich, Zerkalo Nedeli, the mirror of the week. I have the question about IPO. Looking at the term of 2025, it will be the next leader of the process. I don't know, really, my contract is over in 2024, that's true, but my contract is not about IPO. My contract is that I need to prepare the company for IPO. So considering the realistic schedule, if we get everything prepared in 2024, we, I mean the team of Naftogaz, in spite of who is the leader, we should come to the parliament to take away the ban for privatization of Naftogaz, and then in 2025, I do hope successfully to provide this IPO. Who will do that is not that important. It's important for it to be successful. One more question. How do we need the program for 10 years? Why do we need it? Because if we look what it used to be, 2/3 of the expenses are just beyond 2025. Maybe it's easier to create the shorter program and to implement it than the 10-year program, which will be re-updated up in 10 years. Well, I don't think it could be updated. It's not the fact. If we are successfully implementing the program we are having now, and which we plan to implement during the next 3 or 4 years, and first of all it concerns the research of the fields, it would mean that we will create the base for the investment of the money at the horizon of 8 or 7 or 8 years. It's not right to invest into the research without understanding how much the development of the fields costs. So the program for 10 years is the norm. 3-year program is not a norm. This year it was promised to have seismic of the sea. Is it real? Is it realistic? As for seismic at the sea, I'd like to give the floor to Otto, who deals with that, and who can explain about that.
The short answer is yes, that is real. The more complicated answer is that we also are dealing with our public procurement laws. So we want to be transparent on one hand, and at the same time we want to speed up. There's a limited number of parties who can do the seismic. Our team is prepared. We built actually a significant new competence. We attracted almost all the leaders that have been involved in previous work in previous years over the last decade in the offshore. We know extremely well as a company what we're going to do. We know exactly how to run the seismic, and the technical details have been completed. So yes, running seismic this year, if we do not get any countervailing actions from state bodies, is completely real.
Mm-hmm.
And the question to Mr. Rabinovich, you have a very beautiful presentation about the client base, and we can see that this year you are not waiting for any growth of 250,000, but the next year and the year after the next will be everything so beautiful. What beautiful will happen? Well, thank you for the question. Well, you said 600, then 850,000, and then again such a huge growth. As of today, it's 850,000. Up till the end of the year to have 1,400,000. So mostly 600,000 of growth. Why do we consider it? First of all, because up to April this year, there will be a regulated price. The regulated price, which is similar to the market, and of course, in this case, the number of new customers, lead-offs, is not that numerous than it used to be. Before the regulation, it was 12,000–15,000 a day, and now it's approximately 2,000 a day. 2,000 of people are coming to us. So, of course, in fact, we are losing the part of the heating season. We do understand that, of course. So, this plan was made taking into consideration this part. And also, I will be honest, 1,400,000 in our case is the realistic plan, but we have an ambitious ambitious plan, which is higher than 1,400,000, but we would like to look at the basis we have now. In any case, in this case, everything depends on the external factors, because internally we are ready to take, well, I won't lie, not any number, but much bigger number of new customers. We are ready to take them, to provide this transition, and to serve them. So, in any case, we'll look at the external factors. And maybe the last question about the sea. As far as I remember, the prime cost was up to $300. Did this prime cost change as for the sea? Well, honestly speaking, what are the prices when the sea is becoming profitable? Because the program of 2020 was considering $300, but the prices went down and the interest vanished. So, will it get that after the seismic done, it will turn out that we should wait during the current prices, because there is such risk about the Black Sea. The Lukoil went away from it, and I wouldn't say that everything is so nice there. So, can it happen that there will be some of the research and then we'll put it on the shelf and deal with it after 2030?
So let me take that one. Our plan is not to put anything on the shelf in the Black Sea. In fact, we are very excited about the prospect of the Black Sea. We think that some of our most attractive and most significant resources are hidden under the Black Sea. The results of exploration rounds in both Romania and Turkey suggest, do not prove, but suggest that we are right to go for the deeper part, but actually also the shallower part in the Black Sea. So our estimate now is that our fields and our finds may actually be concentrated larger. So not very small pockets, but larger. The exact cost is, of course, impossible to predict today, but our expectation is that the offshore will be well below $200. Otherwise, we would not do that. In terms of timing, they may be today just break even, although very recent prices are much more attractive, of course. And it actually suggests that if you have a 5-year investment cycle, which we have for the offshore, it takes 5 years to go from today to production, and that will be, in international context, very, very fast. There's 2 or 3 projects that went faster. It means that we need to invest now, take relative small investments in seismic, a larger investment in exploration wells that will be able to cost us maybe even 50, close to $80 million for one well. So we may probably need 3-5 wells before we understand exactly what it looks like. It takes a year, between half a year or a year to drill those wells, depending on how deep we need to go. We have an idea about that, but we now know more or less where to go. And then we need to finalize a development plan and get to the investment. That's why you see in the first 5 years more modest, because it's identifying, develop, appraising, defining, then we scale up to the higher levels. So our expectation today is that if we scale that, then the investments we are doing are very wise, because every step on the investment cycle is reducing the risk of the next step. But also it is the timing is right, and we expect that, as I said, well below $200 per 1,000 cubic meters. That's our expectation today.
I would like to add about the Black Sea. One more comment from my side, that we have communicated a lot with our Romanian partners. So we consider that we know approximately why Exxon is leaving, and we know the real reasons why it leaves the project. That it's not economy, it's regulatory environment and politics. From the Romanian part, we think there were certain errors done and mistakes done. The decision was blocked as for how this gas should be brought to the continent, where we should provide the pipeline. Everybody knows this story. And another aspect are the conditions of the Romanian government to the production companies. And coming back to the presentation of our strategy, the stable regulation and its foreseeable character should be also very important for the implementation of our plans at the offshore. If block there won't be blocking of the construction of pipelines or any other way. For instance, the state service can impact our procurement. So if they block everything, then of course there will be issues. So we believe in the economy, we believe in geology, and we do hope that the regulation will allow us to implement this ambitious plan. Thank you. As for the economy, how do you see the company in 2025? The volume of the sales and the revenues may be at least very approximate. Yes, we have this scenario, but we decided not to mention those figures at this presentation. They will be given to the government in the materials sent out to the government.
Будь ласка, наступне питання ось зараз.
The next question, please.
До Ігоря.
Дякую, Сидоров Дмитро.
Thank you, Dmitro Sidorov. Edition X Pro. The question is to Maxim Rabinovich. Does Naftogaz plan to come to the market of the electrical energy for the industrial consumers to provide delivery and supply of gas or electrical energy simultaneously, if the market allows? And a short comment to Ms. Zerkal. What are the preconditions for Naftogaz to allocate low-carbon development as a substantial part of its strategy? Yes, oil and gas company, but still, green technology and offshore energy, how can you pay more attention to it? As for the sales of electrical energy and gas for the legal entities, yes, within the division of retail business, we have three target audiences. The first is the most important, that is the daily and the usual consumer. Two more audiences is the SMEs and house cooperatives, the business connected with the central heating system. Yes, we are selling gas for small and medium enterprises, we are selling electrical energy for SMEs as well, and maybe this is the first step, because we are studying how to do it. Because we know how to sell electrical energy, but it is so important for us to have this comprehensive product of gas and electrical energy, how it should be done for the SMEs, which are now achieving this market. Because, you know, electrical energy is a very powerful competitive market for the bigger players and companies. But the small and medium enterprises are using the historical suppliers. So to take them away from the historical suppliers with the price or with the service is a very hard first stage. As well as in the gas market, in fact. Because not everybody knows that approximately 100,000 companies, smaller companies, which consume gas, 97% of them consume gas from the historical suppliers, not because they don't want to change a supplier, but because to change a supplier at the gas market for SME is the whole quest. The long quest is for the customers for the liberalization of the market. So yes, now we began to do it. We are already creating this operational model. So I think this year we will aggressively enter this market. We'll enter it online, first of all, because we have an opportunity to have those professional consumers, and SMEs are also professional consumers of electrical energy and gas, and we can provide online products without leaving your house. And the next step will be offline with the help of our partners, which we are developing in an active way. As for the development of low-carbon businesses, here we have several factors which impact the decisions of the company. First of all is the social responsibility. It is connected with that we are the part of the society. We are taking the same aims and goals which the society faces. That is, to become the carbon-neutral company up to 2040. And we are sure that to achieve it is not that easy. And we understand that as the partner, we are a very attractive one for the international financial institutions, which are now investing money into the new green energy. That is why in our opportunity is to involve investors, to attract investors and to create new businesses. Our opportunities are much higher than any other company in Ukraine. That is why we connect our interest to the low-carbon businesses and our wish to develop this direction. Thank you. The next question, please. Dmytro Litvinenko, STB, Vikna Noviny. As for the utility bills, because the name of the forum is utility bills, so it is understandable for me that the stable utility bill is energy efficiency. If there is no energy efficiency, the streets can be even closed. So what I liked in your strategy, Maxim, when you showed the block about energy efficiency, that was the picture, the house with a solar panel. It is production. It's not energy efficiency. This is just the change of the type of production. The energy efficiency is the decrease of consumption. So what can you say about the decrease of consumption? How can you help in that? Because comprehensive solutions on energy efficiency is not what you are proposing, to install solar panels, but to help people to decrease consumption of heat if you provide heat, or gas if you sell gas. Will you do that? Or aren't you interested in the decrease of consumption? And the question to Lana. You're saying that European Union, it's so important, low carbon generation, but energy efficiency is important there as well. We have the renewable waves, winterization of the premises, they spent lots of money in that. Ukraine is not going along this direction. This year, 100 million hryvnia are in the fund of energy efficiency instead of 1.5 billion. It is not the priority. Is it a priority for Naftogaz? And should Naftogaz have such a priority to decrease consumption of energy in the country? Or it is just the bees against the honey? Thank you. Okay, let us begin with Maxim. Do we plan to install solar panels? No, I understand what you mean. I understand the question. It was not the question, in fact. As for energy efficiency, yes, we plan all the plans on energy efficiency, beginning with energy audits and ending with the solutions for each customer, what he or she needs to do for the consumption to decrease. This is the part of our strategy, not only of the strategy of retail business, but overall strategy. Yes, we are already conducting pilot projects at Kirovograd region, where we have now 250,000 households which we are serving, and our company, NAK Energo Service, is already conducting pilot projects on the comprehensive decrease of consumption with the use of the energy efficiency products. As I've already told, this year we'll go all over Ukraine to provide pilot projects because it's so important. Why? Kirovograd region. Because we have an opportunity, first of all. There are so many consumers. Secondly, we have friendly relationship, and it is so important, with the local region gas company, which gives us an opportunity to provide those pilot projects which are connected to some technical specifications. And when we go this year all over Ukraine, those will be the pilot projects with the perspective what the consumer wants, what we can propose, which regulatory and legislative and executive measures we need for the independent provider of energy efficiency to be able to work in each of the regions. And it is also, as we understand, a very important step. So again, yes, we are working on that. We are working both on the price and energy efficiency, and this year you will see the result. As for the solar panels, it is also the part of energy efficiency, including, because we say that energy efficiency is not only the decrease of consumption of gas, it's also to suggest to the consumer that type of energy which he or she can use and which will give him or her the biggest saving on the consumption. So to go on what Maxim said, yes, energy efficiency is so important, and we pay lots of attention to it. But it will depend on whether the fund of energy efficiency is working and who our partners are. I'm not sure whether we are ready to discuss bigger projects in energy efficiency now, but we have created the division of heat energy, and lots of things will depend on how the policy of the state will develop in this direction, because we, as it was mentioned by Andriy, really dependent on the regulatory environment and how it responds to the challenges. And if this year there will be the changes of the approach to the PSO in the thermal generation, and if we solve the issues of the debts, it will help us substantially to consider the projects in energy efficiency. Thank you. Yulia, could I add a bit? Thank you. As for energy efficiency, from the perspective of the state, As for now, we were communicating with the President and the representatives of the government and the ministries that energy efficiency can have one more important aspect for all of us. That is the creation of job places. Energy insulation, the decrease of consumption through some construction works, replacement of the equipment, is a very work capacity element. It needs workforce. And we, as a group, we suggest that the state should use these efforts as one of a very efficient ways to create additional job places. For that, we need a regulatory environment. For it to allow it to do it, we need the Fund of Energy Efficiency working, and we need to get rid of some obstacles which were created at the local levels, for instance, at the level of the region gas companies. We can see certain positive dynamics from their side, and it gives us an opportunity to consider that this year, in all of the regions of Ukraine, we'll be having pilot projects which will show the end user the sense to invest your efforts and money. Simultaneously, we should understand that those projects claim certain stable regulatory environment in the part of pricing. If the consumer knows that the state is also restricting the price, we shouldn't await from the consumer a wish to winterize, to provide clever meters and sensors, to provide the new boiler or batteries. This incentive does not exist. But if we have the full fluctuation of price at the market, it is a very important stimulus and incentive, which we hope will make this product more popular and efficient. Thank you. Hennady Kobol, please. Good day, Hennady Kobol, Expro. I would like to pose a question to Andriy Kobolev. It's obvious from the program, from the strategy, from the presentation of the strategy, that the main business for the group will stay traditional business, that is, gas production, carbon. So, the question is, now Naftogaz, during the last months, has got lots of new assets. You've mentioned that this is the Yuzivska and 4 signed contracts and Shore. This is the money which it took 5 years for Shell to get these licenses. And for Naftogaz it was much simpler. So what should we do? Which mistakes we should take into account? Which lessons we should take for this new strategy of 2025? Not to have the fate of the program of 2020. And first of all, we've already heard that there were some external factors which interfered in the implementation of the program. But as for the internal approach, as for the internal work of the company, what do we need to do not to repeat the fate of program 2020? Thank you. Thank you for the question. I would like to say that, in fact, it only seems that we've got everything quickly and quicker than Shell. It's not true. As for Yuzivska, we've communicated with the government since 2015, if I'm not mistaken. So 6 years passed to convince the state to give away such a big platform to a small, not that known company with shareholders, one of which, as far as I understand, is even located under international sanctions. It's not the development, it's the way for the development of this platform. But the question is what we need to do internally, so I will speak about that. If we look at the last 2 years, I may say that besides the licenses, we also got the right to change ourselves. A trivial example. Just recently, the supervisory board in the statute has got what in fact was foreseen by the law. That's the opportunity to change the board of the company. The change of the management some experts and professionals coming to different levels is the first change, is the first task which me, as the head of the group, has posed for myself. And if you look now at the team which we managed to form and to shape in the search of the reserves and their production, in fact, we managed to hire, as I am deeply assured, the best people who ever worked in this region or worked in the similar projects, for instance, at the market of the Northern America. This renovation of the team, this update, is the first important condition, which is compulsory, but is not sufficient enough. The second condition, as for the changes from within, is the change of the culture. A very complicated process, which is ongoing and implementing actively during the last 2 years by us, the implementation of the personal responsibility, the changes of the approaches at all of the stages of the implementation of our strategy, for instance, in such a complicated and toxic stage as procurement are. The changes in the culture of procurement, as for us, is one of the most critical elements of success. Unfortunately, since the last year or the year before the last, the UGV was introduced into the system of Prozoro, which creates substantial risks, and we can see the substantial shortening of the terms for certain procurements without the decrease of the price or without the increase of the quality. In some of the positions, like for instance methanol, the price parameters even grew. But the change of the culture from within, which allow us to overcome those obstacles and to find efficient ways to procure what we need for the efficient work, is the second important element. The third element, of course, is the implementation of the modern ways of work, for instance, digitalization. We managed to begin the practical implementation of the project to install the systems of online monitoring of certain parameters of the wells functioning. And I think that this year this project will be finalized and the quality of our wells will be really increased. Those are the 3 points. People, culture and technologies are the 3 milestones which should help us to become more efficient, and the probability of our success will be cardinally higher. Thank you. Thank you. One more question. Naftogaz has got totally new licenses, which was not, well, they didn't have the work at the sea, with the gases, so will you have some creation of new companies? Will you have some changes in the structuring in those directions? Thank you. Because you've never worked with slate gas as well. As for the new companies, we don't see such a necessity. If it emerges, it's a very simple step. But as for the new departments, they are already created. We've hired people there, and they are working. We have a separate direction of the sandstones, dense sandstones. We have the separate department of offshore. We've also signed the first memorandum, as you can see, with the international company about our cooperation. We do hope that this year we'll sign one more memorandum, and when we achieve the exploration of the Black Sea shelf, our plan will be to have at least 2 partners more. So the approaches are changing. From the practical results and outcomes, Export Petroleum, and I already mentioned it, is the first more or less bigger partnership of ours with the international company at the existing fields. Their results of the work have already exceeded our expectations and the plans which we coordinated with them last year. Okay, thank you. Volodymyr, please. Good day. Magazine Oil Market. When Andriy Kobolev is speaking about the professionals coming, I have the feeling of déjà vu, because the professionals coming happened in 2015. The people who began the program 2020. If we believe Yuri Vitrenko, he said that the program, first of all, has been developed by the workers of Mr. Romaniuk, who is here in the audience, and Mr. Prokhorenko, who is not present here, and Mr. Otto Vaterlander, who was the head of the group of consultants of McKinsey then. Andriy Volodymyrovich is saying that they're ready for the discussion, the company is ready, we need to understand. So can the company publish the analytical materials which were developed by McKinsey consultants, according to which they implemented and created the program of 2020? And the second question, the people are speculating, this is the question to Mr. Van Driel, people are speculating and saying, how much money did we spend for 2020? Someone say 40 billion, Igor Moskalevich says 70 billion, but as for 2020, we should sum up the operational losses and capital expenses of the UGV since 2015 to 2019. 2019 is the year when de facto 2020 was over. De jure, it was over in 2020. I was just calculating and it turned out to be 209 billion hryvnia. So it's a bit more than $8 billion. Is it the approximate close figure to Mr. Van Driel? And one more short question. I didn't want to add it. Andriy Volodymyrovich was speaking about the distant monitoring systems of the wells, and it's needed to do, and all of the production and extraction companies are doing that. But what about the price? We have Mr. Andriy Homenko here. And as for the price of one system, he said that it costs approximately 33,500, though I don't know a single company at the market among the extraction companies who would install such systems. It's much cheaper. So I consider that from the perspective of the expenses, it's a bit too not too competitive. So let us begin with Mr. Peter Van Driel. Are there any assessments of Mr. Volodymyr realistic about the investments into the program of 2020? Almost 209 billion hryvnia. OPEX plus CAPEX since 2015 to 2019.
I spoke earlier about transparency, and in that sense, the question is important and relevant. We publish our financial statements, and the information is publicly available. Do I know by heart whether it's 209 or not? I don't know by heart. However, I think what you should not forget is that the spending in itself is just part of the story. The real question is, what does it give you? So I'm a little bit reluctant almost to focus only on the spending. I think it's the combination of your revenues and your spending. And the whole trick, as we said before, also with the strategy and what we've done in 2020 as well, is that prices come down, then you adjust your expenditures. But going back to the question, the transparency is there. If you look at our website, you see the financial statements. If you want to have the financial statements, send me an email and I will give them to you and we can add them all up. But please, let's put it in a perspective. Let's look at what are the revenues that come with the investments. Because if you only look at the numbers of expenditure, it doesn't mean a lot, right? This is a capital-heavy investment program that we have done in the last couple of years, where we really were run and maintain CapEx. And what is the change with the strategy is that we're going to invest in growth as well. So it's a change in the nature of the expenditure.
And one more comment from me. This question which you posed, I'm grateful for it, because it is very demonstrative from the perspective of the level of the discussion about the Strategy 2020. Any expert in the sphere understands that when you look at the implementation of any plans, you don't need to look at the expenses only, what just Peter said, but at the revenues as well. And our financial reporting is publicly open and accessible. You can easily calculate with our public reporting whether the activity was profitable from the search and gas production. The answer is obvious. It brought profits and it is publicly available. So when you say that you are not making public some of the detailed materials how you created the strategy, I have a simple question. Why do we need to do that? First, find out a very trivial document which is publicly open and give the answer whether this money were invested with the profit, whether 220 or 150 billion. The question is whether this money brought revenue to the invested capital. In the segment of the production and extraction and exploration, our revenues are at least positive. Do we pay back the invested capital is the question which is the next one, and we need to speak about it separately. How our incapability to take debts from the companies which the Naftogaz had to sell gas to without any financial guarantees is another question. But those questions are much simpler than just the question which we had in the end. What's the price of the equipment, of the monitoring system of one well? I personally had negotiations with such companies as Emerson and Honeywell, and I may say that as for the terms of reference, which was appointed for our extraction team, the price which you mentioned is almost real. The Honeywell had the lowest price, and every system of monitoring is different. You can monitor one parameter or you can monitor 10 parameters. You can close this system totally with the fence, with the crate, and you may create the system which would not allow to steal it, and it will be one price, or you don't do it, and then the price is different. If you have the well on the protected area already, you don't need it. We should compare apples with apples. So the system of monitoring question is much more complicated question with the comparison with the question how much money you invested into the extraction and what we should compare it with. Let's begin with the simple questions and then make it complicated. I'd like to give the floor to Otto about the development of the program and his thoughts what happened then.
So it's amazing how much energy the 2020 program always actually brings up, and I think it's also fair, your question, to say, so what did you learn from it? I think Andrei Kolbayev showed how we compare ourselves now compared to what we learned from that. And if you look forward, then we believe that a very significant and substantial amount was hindered by external factors. We were not able to develop a program that we wanted to develop. This also means that the investment program sort of got, I would not say to a halt, but slowed down halfway the program. So we underspent. We spent actually less than the program was defined at that time. What we're looking at now is now we have a new license base. So now we need to take all the learnings and we need to move forward. When we look at all the learnings, I'm actually very excited to have Sasha Romaniuk leading our upstream team. I'll tell you why. We have a significant, Sasha was not responsible at that moment. Now he's in the lead position. Now we have all the history within our leadership team, in the leadership area going forward. If you look now at the top 8 people in our exploration and production team, you find 7 new names with international credentials from Shell, from Exxon, from Vermilion, from North American producers. And not only that, they have actually built very effective teams as well, that today are working incredibly well with the people that we have in the field. So we made actually a lot of effort to make sure that those connections are working. Why? Because one of the big learnings, we don't only learn from Expert Petroleum, from 2020, but also from our partnership with Expert Petroleum. One of the learnings that we have there is that our people in the field know a lot about how to optimize their production. And we're connecting that with international best practices, new technologies and that experience, under the heading of a strong leader with the history in that place. So I think we have a top-notch team that combines what we do in the field, what we do in the head office, what we did in the past, and what we need to do in the future. I think the team that you can call me responsible for as the first one is actually a top-notch team to take forward, and in there we have all the learnings that we need to take. In terms of efficiency and cost, that's a concern. Let's be clear, we are overstaffed in my view. We're working gradually to reduce our overstaffing, and we do this in a responsible way. We will not go after and say all what we have been doing in the past is wrong. No, we'll go targeted area by area, looking at how much we can reduce the cost. That sometimes involves people and often involves procurement. The procurement transparency we need to maintain, and we'll increase even further. And I'll invite you, when I looked at this particular investment that you talk about, I don't know if you've been in the field, I invite you to join me to go to the field. If you look what we have invested for the 33,000, I think then the judgment and the evaluation will be different, because it's not just a meter. I wish it was just a meter. It would make our life much easier. But you're very invited to join us into the field, come and have a look at what we do, and then we'll also show you into some of our cold tubing operations or even some of our drilling operations, so you can see actually what's going on. And the story that we're having is not a story, but how we're connecting best practices and new practices is real, and it's here to stay.
Okay, perfect. So the last question, please, because we're short of time, because there will be the call with the supervisory board at 1 p.m. Please. Thank you. I hope I am the last but not the least. I have several questions, but they're not that serious, but like Mr. Volodymyr's, they're much simpler. So the first question is, why do we focus on 1/3 of consumers, not 50%, not any other figure, but 30? The second question is about the strategy. As far as I know, during the previous times, there were certain attempts to approve something like the strategy, but the government decided not to do that. What are your expectations now, this case? And the third is about the strategy again. Was the development of the strategy a response to the crisis of 2010 or 2020, or those movements forward used to be before? I will answer all the questions. As for the share at the retail market or the market of the domestic customers, this share of the market won't make us almost automatically a monopolist. We wouldn't like to become a monopolist at the market of gas supply for the population, and the restriction of 30%, well, in fact 35% to be more precise, but the aim of 30% was appointed at the level to formally not to get again into the regulation, because the regulation at the market is considered to be very harmful, and to come back to those times is not the right thing to do. As for the formal strategy approval, yes, we had several attempts. Those attempts were done in 2016. We sent the documents to our shareholder, and not a single time when we got a formal cancellation, refusal, or approval. But out of the positive moments which happened recently, I may say that the change of the Naftogaz statute gave the authorities for the approval of the strategy at the level of the supervisory board of the company. So our strategy will be approved by the supervisory board, but the precondition for the government is to be familiar with that and for them to provide any comments. And the third, no, the strategies are not the response to the crisis of 2020, though it introduced certain adjustments. We have the wish as a team to understand precisely where we are moving to, why we do that, how we are moving, and which resources we need for that. So any bigger corporation needs to do that from time to time, at least once in 3 years. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for your attention. If there are any questions left, please send them to the email of the press service of the company. We are happy to answer. Thank you again.